Hi, welcome, ladies. It is Wellness Wednesday again today. So, today we're talking about how does menopause affect cancer risk? And we have got Barbara Walsh, who is a board certified master health coach. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to have you, Barbara. So, Barbara, let's start off with you telling us a bit about why you do what you do.
Well, I became a board certified master health coach after I personally faced breast cancer after I started menopause.
Mm,
In my case, however, I ended up taking a road much less traveled, and I ended up overcoming my breast cancer diagnosis naturally without surgery, radiation, or chemo. And because of my experience, I'm really passionate about trying to inform women about
mm,
what they really can do to protect themselves against breast cancer, because there's a lot that you can do. And I know from my own personal experience beforehand,
mm.
I had no idea that I could do anything that would be effective, that would actually help to prevent it. But now, after knowing everything that I've gone through and everything that I've learned, I know that if I had known it then, I probably could have avoided breast cancer in the first place.
Okay, that's brilliant. Great. So, Barbara, tell us a little bit about does menopause actually increase that risk of cancer?
Actually, unfortunately, it does. 75% of all breast cancers are actually occur after menopause. And the reason why that is, I mean, menopause itself does not cause breast cancer. But the reason why we're at greater risk when we enter menopause is because over time, the body is aging. And over time, the exposure to estrogen that our body makes um, can end up kind of taxing our system. And because when the, and when that happens, when we have a lot of estrogen in our body, cancer actually has receptors that can bind onto estrogen, and
Mm,
estrogen can actually cause breast cancer to grow and spread.
mm.
And I know it's a tricky concept because after menopause, we tend to lose estrogen.
Yeah.
But really, it's the culmination of all of the years that we've been exposed to estrogen. Like things that would be indicators that you might be at a greater risk are, you know, if you had started your menstruation very early in life, and if you had children much later in life, or if you didn't have children at all of that
Mm,
extended exposure to those hormone levels, and the extended amount of ovulations that you may have experienced over the years can actually contribute to the risk. And it really has to do with the age issue, honestly.
mm.
And in fact, women who are over 55 have a greater risk of developing breast and endometrial cancers. And again, it's just because of the length of time that their reproductive tissues have been exposed to estrogen. But I wanted to just kind of share something about that. Now, when I share that with you, I don't want you to think that because these are the statistics and this is the science, which it is, I don't want you to think that there's nothing that you can do about it, because there's a
Mm,
lot that you can do about it.
mm.
Um, I think it's important to know that, you know, just because you're a woman and just because you're in menopause, it doesn't have to be an inevitable thing that it's going to happen to you.
Mm.
And you can actually take a lot of make preventative actions that will actually really help to lower your risk, and even maybe even help you to prevent it, for sure.
So it's interesting you say that, women who may not have had children or who may have, earlier periods, are at greater risk. But I mean, because you're saying higher estrogen, yeah. So
Mhm.
obviously there are things in our environment that actually make estrogen as well, like mimic estrogen, which could then impact again on on someone's risk, increased risk.
Absolutely. That's so true. So it's
Mm,
not just the body's own natural
mm,
production of estrogen. It also does have to do with environmental issues like you're talking about, and like
mm,
um, creams and lotions and ingredients and beauty products that you put on your skin can
mm,
also boost estrogen levels because they, like you say, they kind of mimic estrogen and the body recognizes it as such. So that adds to
mm,
your risk. Drinking out of plastic. I hate to say it,
mm,
but plastic is another big one that actually causes you know, estrogen to be kind of increased in the body just because,
mm,
unfortunately, even though we use it, the plastic can leach into whatever it is that it's holding. And then unfortunately, we ingest it. So that
mm,
pushes our risk up. And then another biggie is alcohol. I hate to say it, but when we drink alcohol, that actually causes our bodies to make more estrogen. So, when you look at it all, our bodies are designed to make estrogen for good reasons. But then what
mm,
happens is that those levels get compounded by other things that are going on in our environment too.
mm. Interesting. So interesting. So, does postmenopausal weight gain have an effect?
It does. It does.
Okay.
I gotta say, I was there when I started going through menopause. I was one of those lucky girls who packed on the pounds and couldn't get them
Mm,
off. I didn't know though. I mean, when I look back at my experience, and we're talking about these statistics, I was a prime candidate to develop breast cancer because I did start my menstruation early. I had one son later in life, and then
mm,
I had packed on pounds, and I was also one of those yo-yo dieters over the years too. What would
mm,
gain the weight, lose the weight, gain the weight, lose the weight. Once I hit
mm,
menopause, I couldn't lose it at all. And
mm,
the problem with the weight gain issue is that when you are gaining weight, there's usually a little bit of a disconnect with your liver function and your
mm,
metabolism.
mm,
And when that happens, you start to carry fat, especially around your middle. And
mm,
that fat that we carry in our body actually creates more estrogen. So
mm,
again, it's pushing our estrogen levels up.
mm,
Interestingly enough, though, science shows that if we can lose weight after menopause or not, keep that managed after menopause, our risk for breast cancer goes way, way down. So
mm.
yes.
Brilliant, brilliant. And this is really, really controversial question, right? Because this has been just, bandied about. I mean, there was something in the UK recently about talking about HRT and whether it increases the risk. And, some say that it doesn't, some say that it does. It's really kind of controversial. Some say that, oh, we used estrogen before for cancer treatment. There's so many different things about does HRT increase the risk of developing cancer. What do you think, Barbara?
Well, research shows that it does actually increase the risk. The
Mm,
longer that a woman is increased to any type of hormones, especially ones that are man-made or, chemically manufactured, it's
mm,
definitely going to increase the risk. In fact, most HRT is a combination of estrogen and progestin,
mm, mm,
and that's a chemical form of progesterone that our body naturally makes.
mm,
And it's also the same thing. Progestin is the same thing that's in birth control pills too.
mm, mm,
And research shows that there have been studies that actually link that to that progestin is and any synthetic type of estrogens, they have all been linked to increased cancer risk. And I know it's a tricky situation because
mm,
when you go through menopause, you feel your body goes through all of these different changes because your
mm,
hormones are in this constant state of flux.
mm,
So we're looking for ways to relieve those symptoms.
mm,
And so it's a valid argument that yes, you might want to look into that. But I actually personally believe that there are ways that you can rebalance your hormones naturally without going the route of taking some, chemically formulated type of, therapy, which
Mm.
anytime you take a medication or something that's chemically made, you run the risk of side effects. You just do.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was really young, I tried birth control pills for a little bit, but they didn't agree with me for a lot of reasons. So I went right off them. But I can remember, the fold out, pamphlet that you get
Yeah.
with your little box of pills. And it's like, it could cause this and this and this.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
side effects are so extensive that half the time you just don't even read them because I'm not even going to think about
Yeah.
that.
You're so right. Yeah, definitely, definitely. So what things can we reduce the risk in terms of cancer during menopause?
Okay. Well, to be honest with you, some of the most powerful things that you can do are related to lifestyle. And the reason why I share that is because I believe the World Health Organization has actually classified cancer and breast cancer as a lifestyle disease. And by virtue of that name, it tells you that it's related to our choices. Now, some people might argue the fact they say, well, what about genetic risk?
Mm.
Honestly, genetic risk can be a factor, but if you look at statistics, I think there are less than 10% of all the breast cancer cases that are actually caused by genetics.
Mm.
So with with a woman being diagnosed with breast cancer every 2 minutes,
Mm.
you've got to common sense would tell you that it's not just genetics.
Mm.
And you know, when I work with people all the time, they always ask me these questions like, well, why would one person get cancer and why doesn't another person? I mean, you could have two women, they could both be the same age, they could both be going through menopause, and one gets it and the other doesn't.
Mm.
And is it just bad luck? And obviously, we just talked about the genes, so it can't always be bad genes, right?
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I think is important for us to understand is, first of all, where cancer comes from. I mean, before I was diagnosed, I was under the impression that cancer was like, this mystery. We can't really understand it. We don't really know where it comes from. And there's nothing we could do about it. So we just better not think about it and hope to God that we don't get it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But
Yeah.
after my experience, I learned that, cancer is not this foreign thing. And it's not like an invisible boogeyman that's like hiding in the closet that's going to hop out and kill us in a moment when we least expect
Mm.
it. It's
Mm.
actually kind of a part of our body's natural cell regeneration process because, as you know, I mean, our bodies are regenerating our cells all the time. And
Mm.
all through life, even as we age, and it's the natural process when our cells either get too old or they become damaged in some way.
Mm.
And in the terms of, and then, in the terms of cancer, what happens is there's a disconnect and um, 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 something happens to our cell mitochondria. And
Mm.
basically, you have a cell and then there's all of this mitochondria around it that keeps the cell alive. And
Mm.
generally, the cells really thrive when they are fueled by oxygen.
Mm.
And what can happen over time is that expression of how that cell gets its energy can become damaged through all of
Mm.
these things that we've been talking about, exposure to toxins, um, these high estrogen levels. Damage can occur in these cells. Now,
Mm.
now this is happening in everybody's body all the time. And that actually blew me away when I learned that because I was like, oh my gosh, there's cancer going on in everybody's body all the time.
Mm.
And so what makes the difference between a person who gets it and one who doesn't? It's
Mm.
actually the power of their immune system. Because
Mm.
when your immune system is strong, your body will detect when there's some kind of cancerous activity that's going on. It will send the appropriate, T cells and white blood cells there to trap it,
Mm.
and eradicate it from your body before it grows, before it becomes something that
Mm.
even has to be worried about. And you would never even know that you had
Mm.
it.
Mm.
When you have a problem is when your immune system becomes compromised. And,
Mm.
we've been hearing a lot since 2020 about, compromised immunity because of the pandemic and all this
Yeah.
other stuff. But it really affects everything.
Mm.
It affects our body, for our full lifetime. And it's the thing that protects us from all disease, including cancer.
Mm.
So that's the reason why strong immunity is so incredibly important. Now,
Mm.
you asked me the question, how do you lower your risk? You
Mm.
lower your risk by strengthening the power of your immune system. And how do you
Mm.
do that? And you could do that with lifestyle changes.
Mm.
So the first one that you can do is to drink more water. I know that sounds so simplistic and it seems like too easy to be
Yeah.
something that's viable that would actually work. But the
Mm.
reason why drinking more water is really important is because, first of all, water helps to oxygenate our cells.
Mm.
And that's what we want. We want our cells to have a good, fresh supply of oxygen all the time so that they can work optimally. Um, the other thing that drinking more water does is it helps to boost the immune system by helping our circulation and our blood to move
Mm.
quickly and optimally through the body. And when our blood is working properly, then our white blood cells can do their job to
Yeah.
seek out and eradicate anything that shouldn't be happening inside of our body, right?
Mm.
Another important thing that you can do is to, I hate to say this, but get some exercise. I know I don't want to use the E word. We never want to hear the E word. We'll call it movement. Okay. But physical activity is super important. And why is that important? Because it goes back to that oxygenating process. When we move our bodies, we start to, breathe and we start to bring fresh oxygen into our body, and that helps our cells. Another really important way that you can lower your risk is to maybe take a look at your food choices. What are you
Mm.
eating on a regular basis? And, you know, by making the choice to move away from maybe foods that aren't serving your body well and
Mm.
moving toward foods that will strengthen your immune system, will really nourish your body incredibly
Mm.
from the inside out. Now I want to just share this one thing about the whole food issue. Like, prior to my breast cancer journey and becoming a board certified health coach, you know people look at me now and they think, oh yeah, you must have been, a good eater, or you must have
Mm.
been, an exerciser, you must have been whatever,
Mm.
and I have to laugh because prior to everything that I went through, I was definitely not the poster child for anything healthy. I
Mm.
was a junk food junkie, a stressed out woman
Mm.
who lived and survived on, like peanut M&Ms and M's and venti cappuccinos, and
Mm.
I didn't care about any of this stuff.
Mm.
So I just want to share that with you, not just to give you some background so you could say
Mm.
to yourself, wow, if I make changes, something really great is going to happen in my body.
Mm.
So it's a choice that we have to make every day. So as
Mm.
far as that's concerned, adding more fruits, adding more vegetables, really trying to move away from processed foods and, foods that are not natural foods.
Mm.
There's a lot of,
Mm.
like, especially if you go to processed foods, there's like, and that's a whole other live that we could talk about for hours
Yeah.
and hours.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, Barbara.
And then,
Yes. Thanks.
yeah. And
Yes.
the
Go on then.
alcohol thing, trying to pull back from the alcohol thing, because again, we want to try to keep our estrogen levels balanced for sure.
Definitely. So thank you, Barbara. So Barbara, tell me, like, what is your typical client that you work with right now? Because as a result of your journey, you now work with women who are suffering with cancer. So
Hmm.
tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I'm actually blessed to work with some women who they're in different stages of cancers. I work with women who have been in conventional treatment for breast cancer for a number of years. I work with women, even younger women, because you probably have heard there's been an increase in the number of even younger women who are being diagnosed with breast cancer,
Mm.
um, triple negative breast cancer. So I've been
Mm.
working with women who have triple negative, and I recently have started working with a woman who she also was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she went through some surgical treatments, but she has decided now that she's gone through her surgeries and she's gotten good numbers back, she's decided she wants to be proactive and avoid recurrence. And
Yeah.
ultimately, what I love to do when I can is I try to share this even with people who haven't had cancer, because as I said earlier, with everything I learned, I really believe that had I known everything I know now, I could have avoided it in the first place. And
Mm.
there's this old saying that says, prevention is worth a pound of cure. And it's so
Yeah.
true. I mean, most people don't care that much about prevention, unfortunately, because they think, well, if it's not broken, I won't fix it. And, I won't worry about it until something happens.
Happens.
But take
Exactly.
it from me. When it
Mm.
comes to cancer, you definitely don't want it to happen in the first place. You want to take control of that situation before you
Mm.
get there. But
Mm.
when I work with the women who already are in that situation,
Mm.
I help them to sort of, first of all, I help them to really, really get a good handle on why they got cancer in the first place. We address their mindset about it so that way they can kind of get set free from the fear, because
Mm.
anyone who's been diagnosed with cancer of any kind, breast cancer especially, it's terrifying. It's the
Mm.
scariest thing that you will ever go through.
Mm.
And so I feel like by helping people to understand what actually happened to them, it can help them to kind of move past this thinking that, they're completely helpless and
Mm.
there's nothing they can do and their life is over. But it really doesn't have to be that way. And,
Mm.
I always say in my situation, not that anybody ever wants to hear the words, you have breast cancer, but I always say that for me personally, it was probably one of the best things that could have happened, because it was a wake up call for me.
Mm.
And it
Mm.
gave me the opportunity to make some changes,
Mm.
and the more I learned about it, the more I realized how much control we actually have.
Mm.
And we can actually, and that's so empowering.
Mm.
Feeling like you have control in a situation that feels impossible is the most empowering thing ever. So I
Mm.
work with the women to help them get to that place. And then I teach them about, the power of detoxifying their bodies, the
Mm.
power of making those, really impactful choices as far as what they're going to eat and what they're drinking and what they're putting on their bodies, and to help them to like create this sort of anti-cancer lifestyle.
Mm.
And once you get in that place, you know, they go from a position of feeling completely defeated, completely overwhelmed, completely hopeless, to regaining their hope, regaining their confidence back that, you know what, I'm going to be doing something really positive for my body. And the cool thing about it is, as we do that, and I know this was true for me personally, as I did it myself first, your body responds. I felt my body responding as I was in that process. I
Mm.
started feeling better. I started looking better. As I told you, I was in menopause. I packed on the
Mm.
pounds. I lost 30 pounds in the process
Mm.
without doing a weird diet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was all done, with food.
Yeah.
And, people start noticing that, you're looking better, you're feeling better. And then you go for your tests and your tests come back great. So it's like win, win, win all the way around.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. That's great. Thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing that with us. So, Barbara, what would you tell a younger you about, you know, preventing cancer?
Well, that's a good question. I think what I would tell my younger self is that screenings are not enough. I know I always thought, because I always was very responsible with my health, honestly. And doing something that would be outside of the box was the furthest thing from my mind. I would always be very diligent about my health. I would go for my checkups. I would go for my screenings. I would do the self checks. I would
Mm,
do all that stuff. And I thought that that was prevention. But
mm,
I've come to learn that screening and prevention are two
mm,
completely different
mm,
things.
mm,
Anytime you go for a screening or you go for a doctor's appointment, not that that's bad, that's never going to help you to prevent cancer. The only
mm.
thing that screening does for you is tell you if you already have cancer.
Yeah, exactly.
So, if you can get that in your mind that, it's good to be diligent, it's good to be, responsible with your health, but, it's you need to take the step of being, first of all, aware of your body. I mean, if you are a younger person or maybe even in menopause, it might be worth it for you to, get your hormone levels checked, check your estrogen levels so you could see where are you on that spectrum. And
Mm,
then also, really take a look at, the choices that you're making and start to look at prevention in a different way. Prevention doesn't have to be a thing where, you know, it's kind of this limited kind of a thing where you can't do anything and you can't eat anything and you just can't. There's
yeah,
so many cans when you
yeah.
get to when you decide to get into that proactive kind of a mindset. And
Mm,
you know what? The best kept secret about it is that in the process, you feel amazing. Like
mm,
people always think that, if they're going to make some changes about the way they eat or lifestyle changes or whatever, that they're going to be missing out on everything. But
mm,
you know what? When you take that step, like this whole world opens up for you and you start feeling amazing. You start looking amazing. You have energy like it goes through the roof.
mm,
And you could do all the things that you want to do and have energy to spare. You have
mm.
clarity of mind, you have focus back. I mean, it's like the best kept secret. People think, oh my God, prevention, I don't want to think about that. But
Yeah, yeah.
meanwhile, you're missing out. I tell you, you're missing out on something. So I would tell my younger self to really rethink that, rethink the whole screening thing, rethink the whole prevention thing, and, you know, do it as an experiment even and check how you feel, see how you feel differently between what you're doing now and what you can do.
Brilliant. That's great, Barbara. Thank you so much, Barbara. Tell people where they can find you, your, social media, your website.
Sure, sure.
Mm,
Well, you can find me on my website, which is www.goodnaturewellness.com. You can find me on Instagram at good_nature_wellness, on Facebook at Good Nature Wellness. And if you really want to hear my whole story about overcoming breast cancer naturally, you can check out my podcast. It's the Good Nature Wellness Podcast. It streams everywhere. Or you can get it at my website, just goodnaturewellness.com/podcast. And if this is okay, I have a gift for your listeners if they're interested. I
mm,
created a resource. It's called 5 Things I Wish I Had Known Before Being Diagnosed with Breast Cancer. And, I share a little bit about my story in there, and I share some more eye-opening information about, breast cancer, what you can do to prevent it, and how you can regain control of your health with your choices every day. And you can get that by going to www.goodnaturewellness.com/5thingsfreebie.
brilliant. Great. Thank you so much, Barbara. It's been amazing having you on.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. It's great to talk to you. I love talking to you, Barbara.
I love talking
You
to
know
you
that.
too.
Cool. So, ladies, that's it for this week's Wellness Wednesday. I'll be back next week, usual time, 6 o'clock. Jackie Grant, granting you better health and fitness.
Bye.